Good afternoon, everyone. I see it's 3:30. We do have regrets from Councillor Seven, so we'll get started. I will call the Infrastructure, Transportation and Safety Subcommittee meeting to order. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next section. Sorry, we do have some delegations and they will be listed under the items that are there, 4.11 and 4.12. And so we'll move on to item number 4, which is report of the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services. And item 4.1 is a series of traffic and safety concerns that have been brought up to the city's attention. And item 4.1.1 is Milton Street and Nile Street all-way stop request. And we have some citizens who are expected to address the subcommittee. And so we have one. Sorry, I'm switching between screens and it's taking me a bit of time. So we have a motion to hear Patrick McCabe, Richard Beatty, and John Callan. Could I have a motion moved by Councillor Gaffney? All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. So first we have Mr. McCabe. Are you on the line?
Through the chair, at the moment I have Mr. Callan on the line, but not the other two delegates. So if it's okay with you, I will permit him to speak.
Yes, sure. Mr. Callan, go right ahead. I will give you a limit of 10 minutes, just so that everyone has the same amount of time. And I'll indicate when you're at 9 minutes. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to thank you for giving the three of us this opportunity to address a change in the intersection at Milton and Nile. I've lived in the area on the southwest corner of Nile and Milton for a number of years. And during those years, I've seen Milton Street change from more or less a quiet residential street into a fairly heavy thoroughfare with a noticeable increase in the speed of the vehicles using the street. That's a cause concern to me, as the area now has a number of growing families with pre and early school-age children, as well as, in my own case, young grandchildren visiting a number of times during the week. I believe that there's a real danger along the street and that the city should be, I think, proactive in addressing that danger rather than having to be reactive after a mishap occurs. The mileage, the speed, I should say, of the vehicles is, to my mind, excessive and excessive. I've really got nothing else to add. If anyone wants to ask me any questions, feel free.
Does the committee have any questions for Mr. Callan? No questions for you. Thank you very much, Mr. Callan. Councillor Ingram?
Thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you. And my question and my comments are not specific to Mr. Callan or this specific request at Milton and Nile, but it does seem like we have a number of speed related and stop sign related requests today. This is an ongoing trend across the city. Previously, it had been in the McCarthy-Foreman area. It's been on Mornington Street. It seems to be a regular occurrence. And so I'm wondering if we shouldn't refer this back to staff to take a look at a blanket 40 kilometer an hour speed limit in all areas that are currently 50 kilometer an hour speed limit. So reducing the speed limit across the city by about 10 kilometers an hour. We've already done that on Lorne Ave. It was previously Alone Ave. It was previously a 60 kilometer per hour speed limit, and we've reduced it to 50. It's helped, I think. And I am seeing other municipalities in Southwestern Ontario take this specific approach as well, because they're also dealing with speed and traffic and related pedestrian cyclist type accidents. So I'm wondering if we could just refer this back to staff to take a look at a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit across the city in all areas that are currently 50.
So that is, are you making that a motion?
I will.
Yeah, so any discussion on that? Because Councillor Burback and then Councillor Gaffney.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Councillor Ingram, and I was going to bring that up myself. The only thing I would add to it is that maybe we could look at defining it as residential streets, because we do have that designation. So there may be some streets that are 50 that are collector that we might not want to look at reducing, because we want the traffic to go on the collector streets. So we may want to distinguish it as residential. The other thought was to maybe look at some ways of enforcing, or I don't know if it's enforcement or possible infrastructure changes or accommodations. I know one of the following items, we had a speed bump was suggested. So maybe looking at either speed bumps or rumble strips, bump outs, other things that might help us in those residential areas to encourage people to slow down. So if we could add that in, that would be great.
Sorry, Councillor Ingram, did you want to, I had Councillor Gaffney next, but did you want to speak directly to that point?
I do, yeah. So we've had this conversation about speed bumps before, and the issues that they cause. They're not overly effective, and many municipalities have been removing them. But I do think that the knockdown bollards with the speed limit on the sign, I think those have been very effective. Waterloo Region is using them across the region right now, and any of the residential areas that you go through, you travel through, even on collector and arterial roads, where they have those knockdown bollards, it does make you slow down. It does make you think about where you are in terms of the lane of traffic. And I think those would be an effective method in terms of traffic calming, as well as perhaps the bump outs and some other traffic calming measures. But I would not be in favor of speed bumps.
Okay, so Councillor Gaffney, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What Councillor Burback said about the differentiation between residential and the other roads. That, yeah, 40 kilometers an hour in residential is a fantastic idea. So, and I agree with Councillor Ingram. Speed bumps are not effective, as we've heard several times over the last 3 years. So thank you.
So I'm just going to add that I'm thrilled that this has come back, because I originally made the motion to do the 40 on residential streets year before last, and it did not pass council. So I think all that we've heard over the last year has maybe shifted that. I will say that I'm looking at some other municipalities, and I know that if we refer this back to staff, if it passes, one of the things is to reach out to the other municipalities that have been doing this and see what has worked, what hasn't, what kind of enforcement they've done. I think really for this to be successful, it's not just the signage, but there also has to be an enforcement piece of it. And I know that staff have had a really good working relationship with the Stratford Police on this around the schools. And I think something like that around education enforcement and cooperation could work as well. So I think all of that works together to help create this. So I am thrilled that it's come back, and it seems to have at least support from this committee. Any other questions on that referral? Because we may actually have some other people wanting to speak to the Milton Street and Nile issue. But I'll tidy up with this, and then all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And so now, do we have either Mr. McCabe or Mr. Beatty on the line to speak to us?
Through the chair, I do have Mr. McCabe on the line.
Perfect. Okay, Mr. McCabe, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
I don't have any visual on the meeting. Am I in the meeting, or is this just a phone call?
We can hear you. So you're just on a phone call. The rest of us are on screen, but we can hear you. So please go ahead, Mr. McCabe.
Okay, so it's not a Zoom meeting then.
It's a Zoom meeting for participants, but it's only a phone. You're only audio for members of the public who are delegating.
Understood. So thanks for putting this item on your agenda. I won't take much of your time. There's no visuals, but I do want to speak to the issue of dangerous condition that's getting worse here on Milton Street. We have a drag strip bounded by any stop signs from Front Downey and from Downey to Front Street. Everybody seems to have some particular vehicles race down the street. We have all manner of vehicles. Cycles, domino pizza drivers. We have large earth-moving vehicles. And have the present white vans. All we have 2 stop signs on Nile Street. We are petitioning you to consider an all-way, a 4-way stop at Milton, and have recently yellow signs. Is that there's slowdown necessary. It doesn't seem to have any effect whatsoever. We have petitioned, have 41 signatures that believe we have a dangerous situation here on Nile Street and Milton, particularly that drag strip that I referred to from Front Street. Visuals are strong. Something's going to happen here. I'm concerned that not enough is being done. Speak to we're not the busiest street in Stratford, sure, but it's the speed. Traffic has increased, but the speed is off the scale. I want to share a vignette. Neighbor, voice lock.
Mr. McCabe, we seem to be losing you a bit. We missed that last sort of 30 seconds or so. Could you repeat that, please?
Repeat what? All of it?
No, just the last 30 seconds. You seem to be cutting in and out a couple times, but if you could just repeat, you said everything after when you say a short vignette.
Okay, want to share a vignette with you all about a scene I saw when working on the front yard. Neighbor of ours, Joyce Locke, been living here for a long time. She's easily in her upper 80s. And her last outing I watched her pass, called to me, and she said, "Patrick, have you got any news?" I knew what she was referring to because she's a signature. And I said, "No, no, Mrs. Locke, no news yet about the stop signs." Well, she continued on, waved. Away she went, walking very slowly, little tiny baby steps. Her cane, tap, tap. She proceeded down towards Downey Street. And there were cars parked on Milton this day. And of course, when there's cars parked on the street, it forces any traffic closer to the sidewalk. And I watched as this car heading west towards Downey Street flew by so close to Mrs. Locke that the wind from the vehicle dislodged her carrying bag, her grocery bag, and it fell onto the road. The car didn't notice any of this, raced up to the stop sign at Downey, turned, left the scene. I watched Joyce try to retrieve her cloth shopping bag with her cane with it, and finally got it back onto the sidewalk. Still standing. Now she's trying to get it, the cane in the handle of this cloth bag. She's having difficulty, but finally gives up. Starts to slowly bend over to pick it up. And at that moment, the cane falls on the sidewalk. Now got the cloth bag in her left hand. Got a pivot, pick up her cane. She manages to do that, painfully slow. Stood up, seemed to take a big sigh, and with the bag under her arm, with her cane tapping onto the sidewalk, she continued on her way. I thought to myself, we are so lately here that just a few inches, that racing car would have just swept her away. One final little vignette. A bright blue, soccer-sized ball I watched fly into the street at the same time that the ball bounced onto Milton. Car hit it. Racing car hit it. And it bounced 3 or 4 properties down and onto their lawn. Car sped away. Girl came out seconds later. Little girl ran across the street, found the ball, ran back across the street. I only share these with you because the sense of the timing I was observing was so close to being eventful in a bad way. I encourage you to take a look at what we think could be a solution immediately. Slow the traffic down by putting an all-way, 4-way stop at Milton and Nile. Stop this drag racing that's going on between Front Street on Milton to Downey and back. Thank you for listening, and I hope you take this seriously. There's 41 people that have signed our petition that would like to know that we could have Milton a safe residential street once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCabe. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. McCabe? Okay, thank you. And do we have then Mr. Beatty on the line? And just I just will remind everyone who's tuned in, we do have a referral to staff to decrease the speeds on residential streets to 40 kilometers an hour. That was just passed in case anybody has joined us a little late, and it does speak to some of the items that we have on the agenda today. Is Mr. Beatty there?
Through the chair, neither Mr. Beatty nor the next delegate, Ms. Brooks, are on the line at this time.
Okay, so maybe we'll move on. I'm just going to point out that Mr. Jeremy Moore did send correspondence in on this item earlier today, along with the petition. And we do have a staff recommendation and a report attached with it about Milton Street and Niles Street and all the always stop requests. And I'm wondering if we could have Mr. Crinklaw talk briefly about the use of always stops and how they are generally not used for speed reduction because they tend to not be effective at reducing accidents. But I'm wondering if you could go over the report just for those that maybe have tuned in and haven't read it.
Great, thank you. And through the chair, when the complaint came in earlier this year, the engineering department did some investigative work to see if what the traffic was like in the area, including at the intersection of Nile and Milton. And through our review, we found that the vehicle rates were what you typically find them being generally 50 kilometers or slower. So that's kind of the target for that road. And to us, it's in that reasonable range that we'd expect for a local street. In terms of the request for the always stop, traffic signage in general, stop signs are not encouraged to be used as a traffic calming method. It effectively pushes the risk or hazard to a different location. The behavioral aspects of people around stop signs is not the greatest, and there is concerns with pedestrians when crossing that they get this false sense of security when reality, the behavioral hasn't really changed for that intersection. So the design and function for traffic, we try to ensure the general road right of way is kind of in a consistent application of these signs. That way the behavioral aspects of drivers is maintained, as well as they know what to expect and to encounter on the road right away and act correspondingly. So I think I'll just leave it at that, and if there's any more further questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Crinklaw? Councillor Burback?
Thank you. Yeah, it's not a question for Mr. Crinklaw, but just a general comment. I wasn't sure if Mr. McCabe heard the earlier part of our discussion. Where we are looking at some other measures for all local streets, which I probably misnamed as residential streets, so that we would look at some other methods to slow people down, including reducing the speed limit, but also maybe looking at some infrastructure additions that might help calm the traffic down. So we're going to we've been recommended to turn down the request for the four-way stop, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to address the speeding issue on Milton Street.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, there is a staff recommendation to receive the report. Moved by Councillor Ingram. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. And then moving on to item 4.1.2 as well, Walnut Street concerns. Ms. Brooks had wanted to address the committee but isn't available and feels quite strongly about the safety concerns on Walnut Street. I do have
You shut yourself off again.
You're muted.
Okay, sorry. So there was a resolution to hear Ms. Brooks, but they are not here. And then we do have a resolution.
You shut yourself off again.
I know I do. I have to, when I go back and forth between screens, Councillor Gaffney, it just takes me a second so I can read because my eyesight is not that good. I am aware. You just have to give me a second. So thank you. Then there is the for direction of subcommittee. So Councillor Gaffney, did you have something you wanted to add about Walnut Street?
I had Mr. and Mrs. Brooks approached me originally on this issue. And I like to make a motion if I can, Madam Chair, that we ask staff to make the installation of a sidewalk on Walnut between Dufferin and Nelson added to their list of sidewalks to do. I don't think we can give them direction on when to do it, but if we could get it in the process, because I agree with them that it being the route from all those apartment buildings to the playground and the arena, you know, in January and February, walking on that street right on the road itself isn't good. So I'd like to make that motion, Madam Chair.
And I'll add that I had talked to the director about this, and it is a street that's missing. It is a local street that's missing a sidewalk on either side. And in reading the concerns from the Walnut Street residents, it did seem like this was an issue about separating pedestrians from traffic more than anything else. So maybe I'll just let the director talk a little bit about where we are on sidewalks and then just give a little insight onto maybe timelines or how this would work, and then we can take a vote on it.
Thank you, and through the chair. So the city staff actively pursue to address the absent sidewalks, and we do have a small amount budgeted for annual installations of new sidewalk. Effectively, the city has 3 different budgets where we address sidewalk. There is a replacement budget that's directly focused on replacing cracked and heaved sidewalk, that kind of thing. We do have some for new replacement, but the priority list has initially focused on arterial and collector roads, and we still have several kilometers of outstanding absent sidewalk on the list. And we also have a section for multi-use trails. So when it comes to sidewalks on local streets that are absent, one option is to look into a local improvement process for this. This section in particular would not likely meet the warrants for size for that process, but that would be one option. And then in terms of figuring out how this could be budgeted, we would have to look from year to year to see if there was additional funding not spent through the other 3 avenues before looking to your local streets. And that's typically what we apply to a class based on priority being addressing collector and arterial roads first.
So just to be clear, if we were to pass Councillor Gaffney's motion to add this to the list of sidewalk gaps to be done, it would be added as where money could be found from those 3 pots of money, and timing depending on how those happen. Is that correct?
That is correct, unless directed otherwise.
So Councillor Gaffney, would that cover would that be a correct interpretation of your motion?
Yes, that'd be fine, Madam Chair. I think giving them some sort of letting them know that it is in the works moving forward here.
Great. And I think the other point to make for this is the previous motion where we may be looking at some speed reductions and infrastructure and enforcement program might help with that street as well. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor about adding a sidewalk along the stretch of Walnut Street. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. And then item 4.1.3 is concerns about the intersection at Romeo Street and McCarthy Road. And we did have correspondence from Mr. Flores about the traffic at that corner. Mr. Crinkle, did you want to speak to this really quickly? Because we had a discussion about sorry, you're probably going to be on for a bit. A little bit about what infrastructure is there, what the warrants might be, what the future might be, and also how this could link into the transportation master plan.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just leave my video from now on. Through the chair, the Romeo Street McCarthy Road intersection is always on our near future list for in provision of becoming a signalized intersection, but we're effectively waiting for the traffic volumes to increase in that area through future development to trigger those warrants for us to proceed with those installations. I did have a quick look into the collisions at the intersection, and they're actually relatively low, so there's not a concern at this point from it. But as I expect the growth of that area to expand, we'll give it more consideration at that point. We are putting out our traffic master plan later this fall, and this would be a good point of discussion when that comes out.
Okay, Councillor Ingram, you had a question?
I do. I was thinking about this intersection, and I actually traveled through it today just to take a look. It's a very wide intersection. There's quite a bit of space in this intersection, and I was wondering if a roundabout wouldn't be appropriate here.
Through the chair, that could be considered when we get to the actual detailed design phase. The initial layout is based off of a signalized intersection, but that could be looked at that time.
Thank you. I'm just thinking that the roundabouts tend to move traffic and keep it moving much more efficiently than signalized intersections. And if it was designed properly, then all of the transport truck and the truck route transportation could maneuver through that roundabout rather effectively. So just a thought.
Councillor Burbach?
Thank you. Yeah, just a further note. I like the idea of a roundabout, but we got to remember too that there's a crosswalk there for kids that travel to school. So that would have to somehow be incorporated. But I like the idea of a roundabout because it does slow traffic down as well.
And just for clarity, we don't need any referral to the transportation master plan for this. This is obviously something that will be included within that without any direction from council. Is that correct? Taylor, or sorry, Mr. Crinkle? Yeah.
Yes, the RFP is out on our website right now and closes next week.
Thank you. So moving on to item number 4.1.4 is concerns about the speed of traffic on the south side of the river. And I do know that we have had a bit of street racing kind of activity. It's certainly on weekends. I walk around that river, so I do know that. So I'm just wondering, we did have a referral a while ago about looking at pedestrian cycling and traffic around the river. Is this another item that would be captured within the transportation master plan, or do we have a report coming back on that still that would cover this as well?
So the chair, I think the transportation master plan would be a good first start, and then that could be an offshoot depending on what the findings are through that plan.
Okay, Councillor Ingram, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, it could also be part of the previous referral motion for the traffic calming measures. This would be another prime location for that.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So I don't think anything else on that item because it's sort of for the direction of subcommittee, but we don't really need to do anything much more with that. Nope. So moving on to, there's a request to add a no parking zone to Fike Crescent. So I looked at the email from Mr. Finn, but it occurs to me that this is about parking overnight and it's not allowed anyway. So I'm wondering what option is available to us other than, it seems to me this is an enforcement issue, but maybe I have that wrong. And I'm not sure whether who could speak to that. Because it seems to me that the letter was about overnight parking and I didn't think we were allowed overnight. There's overnight parking allowed anyways. Mr. Crinkle?
This is a clerk initiative, and thankfully the deputy clerk's online, so he'd be better to respond.
Mr. Bantock, please go ahead.
Through the chair, yes, so that's correct. Currently, there is no parking on any streets or shoulders between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m.
Councillor Gaffney?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you, but it goes to a question of enforcement, I think. Because as I said to the director earlier today, when I moved into my house 20 years ago, there was a better than 50-50 chance you get a ticket if you parked on the street overnight. Now there are no tickets written overnight. Like at that time, I expect it was the police enforce that, because we certainly didn't hire parking enforcement people overnight. So it goes to the parking enforcement people that we hire to enforce downtown the only parking enforcement that gets done in the city of Stratford anymore?
Mr. Bantock, go ahead.
Through the chair, so that would be correct. For enforcement outside of our current hours, being 9 to 8 and 9 to 6, depending on the time of year, we reach out to Stratford Police Services to assist with after hours enforcement. So this situation in this question, we would be asking them to assist in a review of this area.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering if there needs to be a bit of an education piece here with the public put out on when you have parking issues during those hours, who to contact, and then who to contact after hours if you have parking issues. I'm just wondering whether the public is, and if there needs to be a repeat of some of the hours of the overnight no parking hours and things like that. Councillor Ingram?
Thank you. And a question for Mr. Bantock. Would it be advantageous for us to hire an overnight parking enforcement officer? I know other municipalities do have them. And I also understand that the police force has other more higher priority items to deal with. So I'm wondering if this might be advantageous for us to refer to the 2022 budget.
Mr. Bantock, go ahead.
Certainly, if that was the direction provided, I would say that it's not very often that we get concerns like this. So I'm just not sure that the volume would be there to warrant a position. But as if that were to be the direction of committee and go to council, then certainly we would take a look at that.
Councillor Ingram?
Thank you. Yeah, just as a follow-up, I suspect that it happens quite a bit and it happens across the city in many different areas. It's just that people have become immune to it, and the people doing it just don't think about it because they never get ticketed. So I am, maybe it would only take a one-year contract position, because with an education piece and then the accompanying enforcement, people would become better educated and would stop doing it. I'm just, and I have a feeling that if we were to do, maybe even a one-year contract for this type of overnight enforcement service, it might actually pay for itself.
So would you like to make that motion, Councillor Ingram?
Yeah, I'll refer it to the 2022 budget that we take a look at an overnight enforcement officer on a one-year contract.
So almost like a pilot study to see how much there is and whether the education works. So like a whole package. Okay. Any other comments or questions on that? Oh, Councillor Burbeck?
Yes, just a quick comment. In one of the further items, we're going to be talking about wintertime maintenance. So it is the other item is about parking lot, but it would be the same for city streets. So I think our snowplow operators would probably really appreciate having that enforcement so that there aren't so many parked cars on the street in the wintertime.
Okay, thank you. So any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. So the next item is the replacement of Lauren Avenue asphalt. And Mr. Russell had submitted some concerns with the allocation of tax dollars for the city streets. And I think Lauren Avenue is a unique situation. I will say that in looking at what we've done, we have done some work like Redford Crescent, St. Vincent, we've had Olone Avenue, like there has been paving that has been done in other, like across the city. But maybe if the director could speak really quickly to the situation with Lauren Avenue and why it hasn't maybe been done, and maybe just give a little background on that for a member of the public who's newish to Stratford.
Through the chair. Essentially, our funding for asphalt replacement is limited, so we use a matrix to figure out what roads have priority, and that's typically how we address it. And our arterial and collector roads are usually at the top for that. This road in particular has been under study with the Ministry of Transportation in regards of potentially realigning the Highway 7-8 corridor. It was one of the concepts that has come through here, and it's been in the planning process with the MTO for a long time. However, it has put on some restrictions or hesitancies from us to do significant financial work on that road if that were to become true, because that would change the design layout and how that gets funded going down in the future. So we do address areas that are deficient when they come to the point where something has to be done, but we're hesitant going much further beyond that until we know further what's happening with that corridor.
Any comments or questions from subcommittee? Not seeing none. Okay, thank you so much. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is report of the manager of environmental services. And we do have 2 items. One is item 5.1, which is the 2021 fluoride action plan update. And Mr. Bose, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. So just a bit of background on the fluoride report. So in 2019, staff was approached and asked to create some public awareness in consultation with the health unit regarding fluoride in the city's water, particularly to new parents. And the reason for that is natural fluoride in drinking water can cause dental fluorosis, which is an impact on enamel development, typically with children of teeth developing age. So that's typically age 8 and under, I believe. So a few initiatives that came out of that, public health has a very, very informative webpage on their website pertaining to elevated levels of fluoride in the water supply, ways to mitigate anything, and just basically any general questions can be directed to them. Public health also provides fact sheets to the Avon, Maitland, and Huron-Perth Catholic District School Board for distribution to all impacted schools at the start of each school year. There's notices inserted to water bills and sewer bills annually, and also on online billing. And then one of the final components was that one of the recommendations was that an annual report go to council for our latest fluoride sample results. And just for us to comment on if there's any data trends that should be noted. So specifically for the last 12 months, there have been no major variances or changes in our fluoride data trends. Our levels are between 1.8 and 2.2, and that's been milligrams per liter, and that's been very consistent for as long as it's been tracked through the city. The maximum allowable concentration from the ministry is 1.5 milligrams per liter, which we do exceed, and there are many, many municipalities in the province that do exceed this. So it's not uncommon, but there is certain reporting that we have to do, and we do that to the medical officer of health and to the Ministry of Environment when required. So.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? If not, there is a staff recommendation there that the report entitled 2021 Fluoride Action Plan Update be received for information. Moved by Councillor Burbach. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. And then the next item is 5.2, which is the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Risk Management Services Program Progress Report 2021. And that's you again, Mr. Bose.
Thank you. Through the chair. So again, just some quick background on this report. So as part of our source protection plan that was implemented in 2015, each municipality in the province is required to have a risk management official or a risk management inspector. Basically, keep an eye on all of our threat protected areas. So for a well system like ours, we have a pretty large area that needs to be covered and inspected, maintained for people with septic systems in rural parts of the city, farmland, anything like that. So every year we get an annual report from our risk management officials. So we don't have one on staff. Us, along with other municipalities in the area, we have risk management officials from Upper Thames Conservation do this on our behalf. So specifically with this year, the report compared to last year, because of everything that was going on with COVID, they really had to adapt their methods because of face-to-face interaction with homeowners and that sort of thing. It wasn't as typical as it would be on a normal year. So they had to implement some new methods, and it was phone calls, Zoom meetings, that sort of thing. So they pivoted that way to ensure that they were meeting all the expectations that we have, that they are doing their risk assessments and doing their inspections as required. So so if some of the numbers haven't changed that much from the year before, just because of everything that happened with COVID, but and something else I wanted to point out that was not in the report, there was an additional, they contributed a significant amount of time to myself personally when I came on staff, because I was obviously new to the role last fall. So I had many meetings with our risk management inspectors and officials and Upper Thames management, just to help myself understand, the inner workings of this agreement and everything like that. So I just want to point that out, that wasn't included in the report, but it was a pretty significant amount of resources that were spent on that last year. So yeah, if there's any questions on that.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, we do have a motion to receive the report for information, moved by Councillor Ingram. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you very much. And so next is report of the fire chief, and 6.1 is a report on fireworks alternatives. And I believe is the deputy fire chief or the fire chief here to speak to that. Deputy chief, hi, go ahead.
Yes, through the chair, thank you very much. The report of the fireworks, the background on this is the July 2021 ITS and subcommittee direction was given for staff to research and provide a report on fireworks alternatives being used in other municipalities. Staff researched what other municipalities have considered across Canada for alternatives to fireworks, and it came out with basically three themes. One was noiseless fireworks. Don't be fooled, they're also known as reduced noise fireworks, drone light shows, and laser light shows. Municipalities have done research into the fireworks alternatives, stating that they did so to the effects of loud bangs on wildlife, people with autism, and others suffering from PTSD. So some background on the noiseless or reduced noise fireworks. The term is not factual, it's a casual term for reduced noise. After consultation with the Explosives Regulatory Division of Ontario, the following information was provided. Quote, aerial fireworks by nature of their construction produce loud noises since it requires a large amount of quick energy to break open the firework and ignite all the effects inside. That is the large boom you hear when you can see the firework in the sky during a fireworks display. This is the noise that seems problematic for some communities. There are quieter effects such as fountains, mines, comets, or waterfalls, since they do not have break charges that are required to reliably open the shell and ignite their effects. They reach low to mid-level heights, so some can reach up to 200 feet. Noise levels for consumer and commercial display fireworks. A consumer firework must not exceed a noise level higher than 140 decibels within a 5-meter range. Display fireworks must not exceed an impulsive noise level higher than 140 decibels within a distance of 25 meters and a height of 1.5 meters, or have a continuous noise level higher than 122 decibels within a distance of 25 meters, a height of 1.5 meters, unquote. So whether normal or reduced noise fireworks are used, there will still be noise from the black powder launching the firework. Your typical firework reaches up to 600 feet, whereas the reduced fireworks reach approximately 200 feet as low. Doing the lower height, some will, and the limited choice of fireworks, some will find the display rather underwhelming if they can see it at all from their angle. Fireworks are manufactured as standard types or models, and the past providers of fireworks that we've used were contacted, and they advise in order to custom build a noise display, reduced noise display, excuse me, the cost will be significantly higher. So the other option, drone light shows. The drone light shows are starting to become popular due to being greener, more customizable, and without loud bangs. And more venues are advertising with this type of display. A typical light show can use 50 to 500 drones, depending upon what package you use. And there are no loud bangs, but there will obviously be a low hum from the drones themselves, the blades of the drone. They can display unique shapes and words in the sky as well. They can be accompanied with some type of audible music, or you can have a PA announcement system. Transport Canada approval for drone usage is managed by the Drone Light Show Company and would be required to ensure air traffic is not disrupted. The light shows are becoming very popular across Canada and must be booked well in advance. Then finally, the laser light shows. Research into these shows have found them to be another green alternative, but with limitations. They're exciting, typically accompanied with music or a PA announcer with a story. But the laser light shows require some sort of backdrop to provide anything other than thin streams of light going through the sky. So they can be created from smoke machines, a building, trees, water walls, or even a hillside or mountainside. Backdrops would need to be high enough for all attending the venue to see the display clearly. Without the lasers being terminated onto a backdrop, Transport Canada approval would be required to ensure air traffic is not disrupted. Average length of a laser show, 12 to 20 minutes. Longer is optional. So the financial impact, well, reduced noise fireworks, significantly higher costs due to customization required from the standard models. Fireworks providers stated to expect to pay at least double what a normal fireworks display would cost. The drone light show, a customer must work with the provider to design the show, customized show. Costs depend on length and customization, and prices can vary from approximately $16,000 to $196,000 before tax surcharges for special statutory holidays. The laser light show, the customers must work with the provider again to design the customized show. Costs depend on length and customization. Average customization costs start at $12,500, and we don't have a ceiling for that cost. The alignment with strategic priorities, while strengthening our plans, strategies, and partnerships. Partnering with the community to make plans for our collective priorities in arts, culture, and heritage, and more. And communicating clearly with the public around our plans and activities. So it's the, oh, sorry, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any questions for the Deputy Chief? Councillor Ingram, then Councillor Burbank.
So I think our standard Canada Day or July 1st firework event it's approximately 20 to 30 minutes. Did any of the drone companies or the laser light show companies give sort of an average of what is spent for a 20 to 30 minute show?
They did not, but I can research that and have the chief get back to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Burbank.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the thorough report. My question is similar, actually. I'm curious about the cost of standard fireworks. So, and we would be able to figure that out from our Canada Day displays. How much are we usually spending? Because it's hard to know how much if we're doubling the price by getting noise reduction fireworks. I still don't know how much that is, especially compared to the other two. So if we could get that information, maybe, or maybe staff knows, I don't know.
It's through the chair. I have no insight on that. I'd have to contact finance to find out the background on that information, and again, provide that to the chief to respond.
Thank you. Councillor Gaffney, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may have an answer to that question. I don't think the city of Stratford pays anything for the fireworks displays in Stratford. I think both of them that are done through one of the service clubs. So somebody may have to reach out to them to find out how much they spend on them. So thank you.
Yeah, one is a service club and the other is summer music. And so I was going to suggest that perhaps if we receive this for information, but it also, if we, again, I think it would be appropriate to send this report to those organizations and for their information for greener alternatives that they could consider. And I think that and it also may influence, I know one of the groups comes to the city for a grant application, and there may be some wiggle room in that grant application for alternatives. So I think rather than just keeping it as an internal report, it would help to share it with those organizations that do have these who do put on these events. Councillor Ingram.
Thank you. The other piece I would like to discuss related to fireworks is just the sale of fireworks and perhaps putting some sort of restriction on, you know, a limited time frame on when fireworks can be sold within the city of Stratford and a limit on the number of locations that can sell them. I know we've talked about this. I'm wondering if we're going to go down a road where we're going to encourage light shows or drone shows or reduced noise fireworks, then having a restriction on the location and the time in which fireworks can be sold for private property owners would be a good idea as well.
Okay, so open to a motion.
So I'm going to refer that to staff.
So we have a referral to staff to explore. Ms. Defoe, go ahead.
Through the chair, just to provide some additional information. So our current fireworks bylaw is already quite prohibitive. So it currently states that no person shall display, offer for sale, or sell fireworks within the city except on Victoria Day or Canada Day and for a period of 14 calendar days prior to each of the above holidays. So I don't know how much more restrictive this subcommittee would like to see that.
Councillor Ingram, go ahead.
Yes, for the city clerk, does it limit the number of locations that can sell the fireworks as well?
Through the chair, I'm just looking at that right now. I believe I don't believe it limits the locations. That would be subject to our business licensing bylaw. Historically, we've only had a few locations in the city of Stratford that are approved, and they're typically on private property, and the operator is required to receive permission from the private property owner in order to sell there.
Okay, so I'm wondering if perhaps maybe even if we reduce the duration that fireworks can be for sale to a week, maybe it's only 7 days, because that way it doesn't provide as many private property owners the ability to think about it and to prepare and plan and go by. And perhaps maybe through the businessing license program, maybe we only restrict it to 3 licensed locations within the city of Stratford.
So got that. So that's a referral to staff to come back with changes to the current bylaw that reduces the amount of time they can be sold and the number of locations that can sell fireworks.
Correct. Yes,
Perfect.
thank you.
Okay, any comments or questions on that? Councillor Gaffney.
Yeah, as a retired businessman myself, I'm not going to support either one of those suggestions. My apologies. So thank you.
It's okay. We can't have all unanimous votes every time. Any other comments or questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's 1 opposed, and that's carried. Thank you. And so we still have a staff recommendation about receiving the report for information. Councillor Burbach?
Yeah, I'll make that motion and also a request to share the report with the other organizations that do fireworks.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is report of the city clerk, item number 7, and item 7.1 is request to consider fully or partially subsidizing the Humane Society's surrender fee. There was a report circulated. Ms. Defoe, did you want to just touch on the highlights of that report?
Through the chair, certainly. So in 2016, council appointed an animal control working group to review the city's animal control bylaw. And following this review, several recommendations were considered and referred to staff for review and analysis. And the focus of this report is on the request for the city to investigate covering or subsidizing the cost of the Humane Society surrender fees. So the cost to surrender an animal varies depending on the age and their vaccination status of the animal. On average, the cost to surrender a cat is about $75. For a dog, it's $125, and for a small animal, it's $20. As outlined in the report, there were 157 animals from Stratford that were surrendered to the Humane Society in 2020, and approximately $13,370 in surrender fees were waived. If the city were to consider fully subsidizing subsidizing the surrender fees, the estimated cost based on 2020 numbers and the average fee applied would be about $12,000. Staff did consult the Humane Society on this request, and based on the factors outlined in the report, are recommending that the request be filed, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions, Councillor Gaffney?
I'll move the staff recommendation, Madam Chair.
Any comments or questions on that? No? Okay, so all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. So the next item is item number 8, and it's report of the deputy clerk, and there are 2 items. Item 8.1 is traffic and parking bylaw amendments. And Mr. Bantock, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. The first report is a couple of housekeeping items that staff are recommending for amendment to the traffic and parking bylaw. The first being an amendment to section 8 sub 1 sub j to add the words or city parking lot and unless otherwise designated. So then this would read as follows: no person shall park a vehicle in any of the following places during the specified times, being on any roadway, shoulder, or city parking lot between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. unless otherwise designated. The second amendment being proposed is to section 82. This is just to increase authority and clarity around instances when the towing of illegally parked vehicles would be permitted. So the amendments being recommended here are to add interference with snow removal or winter maintenance and road or parking lot maintenance or construction being undertaken by the city or its contractor. Parking enforcement officer would also be added as a position of authority under this section for causing a vehicle to be towed. Currently, this is only identified as police officer or bylaw enforcement officer in the bylaw. With Stratford Police being required to conduct these duties for us in the past, staff have also reached out to comment on the proposed amendments and did not receive any concerns from police services. Should these recommendations be approved, we'd be then proceeding to have a bylaw brought forward to amend the traffic and parking bylaw respectively. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? I don't see any, so we do have a staff recommendation. Moved by Councillor Burback. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you very much. So then the next item is 8.2, and it's Cooper Lot Free Permit Program. Mr. Bantock, you again.
Through the chair, with the current parking options available to downtown residents, either involving a cost or 24-hour time limit, concerns are often raised with staff regarding the availability of parking for downtown residents that do not have a permanent parking solution. Staff are proposing, as a result, to increase flexibility for these individuals by introducing a free permit program in the Cooper Lot. So the program would make available 30 permits, which is approximately 10% of parking in that lot. And this would be to downtown residents only for consecutive parking up to 72 hours in the upper portion of the lot. The collection of information as a result of signing up for the program is also going to allow staff to contact vehicle owners in the case of an emergency or any scheduled maintenance that's required. To give effect to this program, should it be approved, staff will be purchasing new plastic permit holders to increase the ease of identifying program participants by our parking enforcement officers. And we'd also proceed to have a bylaw brought forward to amend Schedule 19 and Section 82 of the traffic and parking bylaw. And happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Ingram, go ahead.
Thank you. So just out of curiosity, if someone is able to park their car here for 72 hours and then they have to move it, where do they go and what do they do?
Through the chair, sorry, do you mean if they needed to stay somewhere longer than 72 hours?
Correct, yes.
So through the chair, typically what our practice has been, as is with the current 24 hours in the lot, we have permitted vehicles to just change spots in the lot. It's really just to make sure that we're keeping within the time constraints and that we're keeping vehicles active in the lot. So as long as you're changing spots as per the time, whatever's permitted in the lot, then that would be acceptable from an enforcement perspective.
Thank you. That was the answer I was hoping to hear.
And Councillor Gaffney, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I express some concern that we are going to provide and moving vehicles around notwithstanding free parking for people in the Downing Street lot when we're charging people that live on Ontario Street $113 a month to park in the York Street parking lot. People that are going to be parking in the Downing Street lot, I suspect, are people that live at that end of the downtown. And as I say, I just have some concern that we're charging $113 for some people to park in downtown, and we're charging nothing except the cost of the hangar to park in the Downing Street lot. Or maybe I'm confused on this. Maybe I'm misinterpreting what's going on. So thank you.
Mr. Bantock, you wanted to speak to that?
Yes, so through the chair. So the main two differences there would just be that the cost for the permit in the York lot does not have time restrictions. So you can be in the lot overnight with that permit, whereas the Cooper lot, you have that 72-hour time restriction.
Okay. Councillor Burbeck?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm just wondering if you had a York lot permit and the concern was snow clearing, do we ask the residents to move their cars to snow clear? That's question one. And question two is, would we not consider doing a monthly permit for the Cooper lot and charging something for it, which might actually be a lot more convenient for residents who live in that area?
Through the chair. So when maintenance takes place, whether it's in the winter or the summer for construction, typically we do try and provide notice, even if it's just placing something on the windshields of vehicles to advise that this is going to be taking place. In the winter, obviously, it's more difficult because snow can happen at any time. So staff do their best to clear around vehicles if there are some parked overnight. As for any changes to the program, that would be at the direction of subcommittee if that's something that you'd like to see. But as it would be right now, if we were to go ahead with the program, it would be on a semi-annual basis, and with no cost, of course.
So are there any other questions? Although I was going to sort of add that we keep talking about the Cooper and the Downey lots and charging for them and those conversations come up again. And I think that this could be rolled into another conversation about even day parking there at some point. It usually comes up at budget time. Councillor Ingram, go ahead.
I was going to kind of go along the same lines. It continues to come up and we keep circling back usually at budget time, but I'm wondering if there isn't room for both programs. If there isn't room for the 72-hour pass as well as a monthly pass. Because I do feel like I know somebody who lives in a condo on Ontario Street and does not have a parking space. And so they park quite a few blocks away at someone else's house. and then walk back to Ontario Street. And if they had the ability to park here, I'm sure they would take that up. So I'm wondering if there isn't room for both programs.
So, and it could be that if you want the usual free 72-hour, you could. And if you, is the idea that then if you wanted to pay the usual 113 a month, so you could just park your car and not worry about it, that we would offer that maybe at a specific location or whatever, something like that. Is that what you're thinking? Councillor Burbach, did you have a comment on that?
I was just going to agree with that. That was kind of my thought. We'd have the 72-hour possibility, but if people wanted to do a longer term, even if it was a different price, perhaps if it's location wise not as desirable as York Street, maybe it's priced lower. But I do think it's good to have options, and if people want the convenience, then maybe they should pay for that.
So I was going to say, so if I may, we could pass the staff recommendation on this, and then did we want to refer back to staff to come back with some kind of pricing on a more long-term parking in those parking lots that could also take into consideration location and things like that? With that, like I'm thinking, so Councillor Ingram, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And perhaps, you know, just to start off, the monthly parking permit would be at a very limited number, like maybe we're starting at 10, something like that, and see what the uptake is. But the option of having both programs, if you have that 72-hour and you happen to live in the downtown, then it allows you to have guests over that can leave their car there and they can park there for the 72 hours and you can get them that permit. Or you can have, I apologize, sorry, I've got my other laptop open here. You can also, if you have your own car, then you can park it and leave it and you don't have to worry about it. So it does allow a little bit more flexibility for all of the residents within downtown or the tenants within downtown. And we can, you know, again, it could be a very limited number because I know parking spaces in the Cooper lot do get well used. So maybe we reduce the 72-hour spaces to 20, or the spaces for those passes, maybe there's 20, and then there's 10 of the monthly permit passes, just as an option.
Okay, so open to a motion. Okay, Councillor Ingram.
So I'll start off by moving this staff recommendation.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed if any, and that's carried. And then did you want to add a referral for the monthly parking?
Yes, and I do note that the staff recommendation that we just passed was including 30 72-hour parking permits or parking spaces. So I'm just gonna leave that with staff to figure out how they want to work with those numbers, but I will refer that back to staff to review a monthly permit program for the Cooper lot or the Downey lot.
Okay, any other comments or questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed if any, and that's carried. Thank you. So then the last item is the capital project update. It was circulated. Mr. Crinclaw, did you want to hit the highlights and then maybe we'll open it up for any questions?
Sounds good. To the chair, the Queen Street trunk storm sewer project's well underway. The tunneling shafts will begin construction next week at Lakeside Drive in Romeo. Huron Street reconstruction, there's an open house scheduled for October. And this is from Mornington to Avondale, the section that's being considered for 2022 construction. TJ Dolan multi-use trail starts construction as early as next week, might be delayed to the week after. We're having difficulty with getting locates in time. The engineering department is very busy with development review at this point. We have a lot of subdivision applications that have recently come in. In terms of the water department, they had a successful external audit of their DWQMS reports and filing. In terms of wastewater, the first draft of our wastewater collection system consolidated linear infrastructure ECAs is well underway for the deadline of January 2022. Public Works is busy transitioning from summer tasks to winter preparation. They've also begun the Friday night Lakeside Road closures for the Warrior hockey games. And that's my review. Any questions?
Any questions or comments? Councillor Gaffney?
I didn't have any questions directly on the report, but there's a couple other things. I don't know if this is the right time or if we're doing a new business section, Madam Chair. Just go ahead.
Bring it up now. This is as good a time as any. Go ahead.
Thanks. The couple things I called you about earlier in the day, and I think it just the people that asked me the question, if it was a public response, then they'd hear it directly from the horse's mouth, I guess. When is the McCarthy, or do you know when the McCarthy extension through to a loan might be moving forward?
Yeah, through the chair. So the city doesn't own the land that the extension would go through. So we're working through different avenues for us to acquire that land as we speak. And then when we have something more firmed up, we will bring it to council that time.
Okay, so it's not going to happen this year as there was some expectation of.
We are including it as part of the 2022 budget deliberations. We hope to start work with it next year sometime.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing was, did you get any feedback on how well our stormwater management system worked after all that rain, that 3 days of rain we got last week?
Yes, so as through the chair, as many people may have witnessed, their local storm ponds would have seen elevated levels due to the higher rainfall that we received. In terms of the large ponds at the edge of the city, the Downey and the Waldy ponds, not much was noticed there. Those are designed for your very, very large events, your 250-year events. The pollution control plant recorded about 100 millimeters of rain over a 24-hour period, which is a good sum over a 24-hour period, and they had some work on their hands to address the incoming inflow over there. So other than that, the public works were pretty much up all night addressing the flooded catch basins and made sure they were cleared, ensure we had adequate flow. And then we had a bit of small ponding in areas where we typically expect to see ponding, being Lakeside Drive, TJ Dolan, Avondale Cemetery, that kind of thing. But otherwise, fairly limited through the city. Though I have heard from many private residents that they've had some frustrations and issues in the past for that event.
And the structure at TJ Dolan and John Street sure got tested with the force of the water that was running through there. So that's good. Thanks, Taylor.
Great. So anything else? Seeing none, there aren't any advisory committee or outside board minutes. The next meeting will be October 27th at 3:30. I'm wondering if the vice chair could chair that meeting, if she's amenable to that. That sounds good. And motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Ingram. All in favor? Thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice afternoon.